Hey y'all, Mike with Cardboard Kingdom here. Today we're going to be taking a look at the rarest cards within Disney Lorcana, kind of going year by year, identifying which cards are truly the rarest and the scarcest, and talking about value and where maybe some opportunities might lie for us. You can't really start talking about collecting and rarity and scarcity within Lorcana without talking about the D23 promos. These were promos that were released in 2022 at the Disney D23 convention. These were the only cards within Disney Lorcana that were identified with the first edition stamp. So on the bottom of these cards, you see a D23 indicator. You also see a first edition indicator. These are the only cards within Lorcana that have this indicator, and they are the only first edition cards within Lorcana. Therefore, these cards are kind of the start of the game, if you will. They are very iconic IPs, very iconic characters. They have traditional art, not a full art, but it is the enchanted foil. They're the only card of their kind that have that specific layout. And the way that they were released is the 2 through 7 here, Stitch, Elsa, Cruella, Maleficent, Robin Hood, and Captain Hook, came in a collector's box of 6 of those cards. So all 6 boxes, all 6 cards came in that box, and that box was available. There was roughly 900 to 1,000 printed into existence. Overall pop reports on these cards are very, very low for the 6 that we talked about there. PSA 10 pop report for Stitch is 334, 365 for Elsa, 316 for Cruella, 310 for Maleficent, 308 for Robin Hood, and 383 for Captain Hook. The other card that does have the first edition stamp is the Brave Little Tailor Mickey Mouse, one of the best arts within Lorcana, kind of the face of Lorcana. When I think of Lorcana, I think of the Brave Little Tailor Mickey Mouse. He now has the gold serialized version. We're getting another D23 version. There's the regular set version. That art is very popular. It's an awesome card. No surprise as to why. But this card was given out outside of the box set. So this card was given out as an individual card to people attending the event, and that's why you see more of them. There are more of the Mickey Mouse Brave Little Tailor cards in existence because they did not come within that set. Now, when you look at the PSA 10 quantity, you're still only looking at 620 right now. So still a relatively low number when you think about comparing this to like a set card like the Elsa or something like that from the first chapter. The Elsa is closing in or has surpassed now at this point 2,000 PSA 10 copies. So you're still, when you kind of compare like the Elsa, which is kind of the grail chase card within Lorcana right now, when you look at something like the D23 promos, you're looking at something that's got a significantly less quantity in existence. And especially when you compare prices, last I checked, to get the Elsa Snow Queen in a PSA 10, it was around 6,000, and it's been a couple weeks, so I apologize if that's off, but 6,000 give or take for a PSA 10. But a PSA 10 Elsa right now is about 1,500. But when you think about how truly scarce the D23 version is, first edition stamp, all of that provenance, the 6,000 price point really isn't that bad when you think about it. I personally, as a collector, have a really hard time justifying going out and getting these cards because their MSRP at the D23 event was $49.99. And so that, just the idea that someone waited in line for an hour or two, paid $50, and now they're flipping the entire box for around 8,000 here just a few, 18 months later. If they graded them, then you can get somewhere between probably like 15 to 20,000 for the set. As a collector, as I'm trying to make the most of my collection and spread my money as wide as possible, picking up a D23 card that someone paid $50 for just it hurts. Not to say that it's a bad move. These cards are incredibly rare, and they will hold some of the most provenance. If you are like me and believe Lorcana is going to continue to grow, these are some of the best bets out there, and cards that make probably the most sense to collect, to be completely honest. Now, some cards that are not as collectible, in my opinion, but are definitely the most rare and the more scarce within Lorcana are the demo deck cards. So the demo deck cards are the decks that the Ravensburger team went to market with to go out and pilot and show Lorcana off. So as they were going to these different conventions, going to these different areas and just gatherings of people, whether it was like a specific trading card event, whether it was a like a tabletop convention, all these different events that they went to, they were taking demo decks around and piloting Lorcana, getting people's feedback, letting them play with the cards, and this was just their go-to-market strategy to try and get the game in people's hands and see what they thought of it. So when they did that, they had there's an undetermined amount of decks that were printed. When we look at the pop reports on these, like for example, just a random card here, the Maximus, there's been 4 copies that have been graded. Now, one thing to keep in mind is there are other grading companies that have graded these cards. I know CGC has graded quite a few. I don't know if really anyone else has apart from CGC and PSA. But if you combine both pop reports, then maybe there's 10 decks out there, so 10 versions of these cards. Maybe there's 20, maybe there's 30. I don't know, but you kind of get the sense of like how truly rare these cards are. I would definitely say, sub 50, probably even sub 40 of these cards in existence overall. There is very much some controversy around these cards as they were supposed to be destroyed whenever they were done being piloted. So Ravensburger didn't really want any of these getting out into the public. I think a mix of employees with some bad actors, or I wouldn't even say bad actors, people who wanted to collect them that were willing to pay a substantial amount of money. They made it onto the market, and now we have people that are selling the cards. If you guys remember, I did a video a couple weeks ago. So a bunch of these went to auction. I did try and pick some up. The cheapest that they went for was anywhere between like $100 for a common up to even $500 for a common. The Flounder, for example, went for over $500 or right around $500. If I remember correctly. So you can get these cards on eBay right now for anywhere between like $200 to $300 for a graded copy of the card. So they're very rare. They're very scarce. They are unique in the sense that they have demo written across the back of the card, so that's really cool. You can identify them that way. But at the end of the day, they $500 for a common card. As a collector, I'm probably gonna go somewhere else that has a little bit more eye appeal, something that I find a little bit cooler. But you can't really talk about rarity and scarcity within Lorcana without bringing up the demo cards that they kind of went to market with. Definitely a lot of prominence there, and I would not shame anyone for adding a demo card to their collection. They are very, very cool when it comes to that. Now, moving on to some of the more readily available, but still more scarce than like think of like a set card or something like that, are going to be our league play promos and our event specific promos. So when we look at the 2023 year of promos within Lorcana, you can see we start to get quite a bit of quantity, right? Just we're up to 33 different promo cards that are listed. Looking back to last year, this encompasses all of the Disney 100. Think of Rise of the Floodborn gift set. This includes all 6 of those cards. You can see their PSA 10 pop reports here, all over 1,000 except for the Maui. This is the single hardest card to grade within Disney Lorcana. When you're looking at a pure gem mint perspective, we are staring at a I think like 30% gem mint rate for this card. Only 372 in existence, which when you compare that to the D23 promos, pretty similar vibes there. So that card is incredibly rare, very collectible as people begin to maybe want to get a master set of the D100 and a PSA 10, right? As more collectors come into Lorcana and it continues to evolve, that's going to be a card that if you keep your eye on, you can find some pretty good deals. I've acquired several of these for like less than $70 just because people don't truly know what they have. This card is incredibly rare, and it's gonna, in terms of the PSA 10 version, you can get a raw copy for like $1 or $2. If you're able to pre-grade well and get lucky, find a grader on a good day, you can make a decent profit with grading those Mauis. But that is a pretty rare card and just the hardest card to grade within Lorcana, in my opinion. But when you start to look at some of these promos, some of them make a lot of sense, and some of them aren't necessarily as rare. Like when you look at the Gen Con 2023 Mickey Mouse Musketeer, over 1,300 copies in a Gem Mint 10 grade. That's more than a lot of set cards. So a card like this, it's cool because it's got a unique indicator. It's got the Gamescom 2023 logo at the bottom, so it kind of has some provenance there. But that being said, there's a ton of them out there, and a lot of them in a PSA 10 grade, over 1,300 available. But when you compare it to some of the other cards that came out in 2023, Rapunzel gifted artist event exclusive, Pinocchio talkative puppet event exclusive, 4 dozen eggs event exclusive, sorry, and even Gaston arrogant hunter event exclusive. I mean, you're talking 51 Gem Mint 10s, 54 Gem Mint 10s, 61 Gem Mint 10s, and 146 Gem Mint 10s. These cards are incredibly rare, and they don't grade that easy, right? When you look at like the Pinocchio, 54 Gem Mint 10s, but 113 have been graded. So anytime you're staring at a sub 50% Gem Mint rate and a card that didn't come out of a booster pack, that can start to kind of add a lot of fundamentals to a card that might see disproportionate gains in the future. This card raw right now is about 50 to 60 bucks. The one caveat that I will put on this that we've learned with the promos within Lorcana, especially the event exclusive promos, is they are not necessarily they're event exclusive with the caveat that they're exclusive to multiple events. So like the Rapunzel, for example, it was given out at an event. I think that one was one that was given out in Europe. I might be mistaken on that, but it was given out at a specific event for people attending that event. They either had to buy like something from the booth to get it, or they had to like sign up for a demo for something to get it. They basically had to invest a little bit of time or money, and in reward you get the card. With that being said, we then saw some of these cards pop up at the Disney Lorcana Challenge prize ticket wall. So you can pay like, I think it's like 5 to 10 tickets, get a random promo. That might be the Gaston Arrogant Hunter. That might be 4 dozen eggs. That might be a random, Donald Duck Musketeer from Spiel Essen. It seems like they have quite a bit of the promos there. So when just a good reminder is it says event exclusive. And so in my mind, I kind of thought, okay, well, it's exclusive to that one event. It's exclusive to just events in general. So just to kind of keep that in mind, but that doesn't take away from the fact that there's only 61 PSA 10s for the Rapunzel, 54 for the Pinocchio, 51 for the 4 dozen eggs, and only 146. Still a very low number for the Gaston when you talk about collectability. And if you believe that Lorcana is on this rocket ship that I do, and more collectors are going to be coming in the year over year over year, these cards are cards that, once again, you can acquire for a pretty cheap price right now. Look to grade them yourselves or acquire the PSA 10 version. And as more collectors come into the game and they want to collect a full event exclusive set, they want to collect a full promo set, there's a lot of rarity and grade collectors out there, right? Condition collectors out there. And these cards, when you talk about it, 61 for the entire ecosystem of Disney Lorcana, that's something that could provide really good returns. One thing to keep in mind is anytime we're looking at these pop reports, guys, and I should have mentioned this earlier, these numbers will go up, right? These numbers are not going to stay where they're at. They are going to go up. As those cards start to command the premiums that maybe they deserve, it's going to kind of pull them out of the binders and get people to send them off to grade and then list, right? So these numbers are always going to go up, but this does give you a good sample size of how many are truly out there. These cards are already $50 to $60 raw. So if people know they can get a 4 or 5x premium if they have a Gem Mint copy, a lot of people are going to exercise that. Some people don't know about it, right? And some people haven't really seen that. If they start to see them go for $500-$600, they're probably going to try and get them graded and put those on the market. But 61, 54, and 51 for a 2023 event exclusive promo, feel pretty good about that from a long-term play perspective. Acquiring a couple of raw, trying to grade them is definitely the way I would go about that. Now, as we move on to 2024, just real quick here, as we look at the prize wall cards, so the cards that are coming out of the challenge event, we have, these numbers are definitely not up to date. There's going to be a lot more of these hitting the market, but just to give us an idea on like how hard these cards are to grade, there's really only one that remains very, very hard to grade, and that is the Rapunzel prize wall exclusive. And so just a reminder for those of you that don't know, at the Lorcana Challenge events, there is a prize wall. On that prize wall, you exchange your tickets from competing in the event or attending the event for cards, for booster boxes, for merch. There's a lot of different things you can get with it. One of the cards that you can get is the Rapunzel Gifted with Healing non-foil version of that card. The foil version of that card is given out as a trophy card to top competitors. The non-foil version is given out at the prize wall, and you can see 57 have been graded. Only 24 have gotten a Gem Mint grade. So this is a card that's going to be pretty hard to grade moving forward. Now these cards, there's a lot of them. There's a lot more that's on this pop report. There's going to be a lot of them by the time it's all said and done. So I wouldn't say that these are necessarily cards that I would acquire right now. I'm definitely on the sell side of these specific cards. I'm going to be looking to be a buyer here in probably 5 to 6 months as all the challenge events finish and we have kind of the final inventory flushed out. But these cards are not ones that I would go after right now. They are rare and scarce when you think about the long-term trajectory. But right now they're not at the lows. There's a lot more to come here, so do not FOMO into these cards would be my recommendation. But I did want to note that the prize wall exclusive Rapunzel is definitely a very hard to grade card. 31 nines, 24 tens with 2 8s there as well. So worth keeping in mind. And then the 2024 promos, the one thing I wanted to point out here, because a lot of these haven't been graded yet because it just doesn't make sense. A lot of them aren't commanding a premium. Like when you look at the, Kit Cloud Liquor, it's like a $2 card, right? So not a lot of people are going to grade that because there's not a big market for it in terms of secondary. It's a very low cost card. I did want to look at our Stitch though, the very first trophy card within Lorcana, iconic character, iconic art. If you've been watching this channel, you know that this is one of my top cards in terms of like long-term collecting and holding. I have multiple copies of this card, and I intend to get them graded whenever I do my next submission. But at the end of the day, there are only 296 in existence. So when you compare this card, and this pop report is definitely going up. It adds. As of right now, it's kind of been like 10 to 15 week over week. But overall, still a very, very rare card in a gem mint grade because it's very hard to grade. You look at the 296 population 10 report, there's 648 that have been graded. So it's got kind of that sub 50% gem mint grade. It's the first trophy card that was ever awarded in Lorcana. It's the first enchanted trophy card ever awarded in Lorcana. It's got the Stitch Rockstar art. It looks amazing in person. Really, everything that could be going for this card is going for it, and so that's why I'm such a huge fan of it. But with only 296 in existence, does this card end somewhere, like 500-ish would probably be a good range to kind of forecast like the pop report ending at, roughly, give or take. That makes this card extremely collectible. You're talking like kind of D23 levels, right? Once all those get graded, that's probably where they're going to end up, somewhere around 500 gem mint 10s. The first trophy card within Lorcana could end at that pop as well, and so that gives it a lot of prominence as we look into the future. And then just to give you an idea of like the cards that we're looking at versus set cards. So this is set 2, Rise of the Floodborn Pop Report. Another card that I'm a huge fan of, kind of Stitch and the Cinderella. When we talk about like the everyday collector, the common collector cards that they're a significant investment, but they're not 2,000 to 3,000 to acquire raw, like some of the D23 cards. The Cinderella Ballroom Sensation card. This card has 544, so this is a set card. It's got 544 PSA 10s in existence. It's well below the PSA 10 indicator, or PSA 10 gem mint rate. It's the first enchanted that Cinderella ever had, and it's from a set that was not reprinted into Oblivion like the first chapter was, and the subsequent sets that came out after the demand was kind of identified. And so I'm a huge proponent of the Rise of the Floodborn as a set. It does not have any enchanted locations. It's got awesome IPs between the Cinderella, the Snow White. It's got Alice, so it's got a lot of princess power. It's also got some really cool art between Beast, and honestly, I'm just a fan of a lot of it. The Hercules is awesome, but nevertheless, some of these cards in set 2 are much harder to grade than the other sets. Cinderella specifically being one, only 544 gem mint 10s in existence. There's a lot of people that like Cinderella, a lot of people that are still yet to know about Lorcana that are going to get into Lorcana. They might be chasing a PSA 10 version, so this is one that, in terms of like set cards, that might make a lot of sense. Versus a card that grades really easily, that isn't going to have as much demand, something like maybe the Shere Khan, a card that has 334 gem mint 10s out of 493 being graded. The IP isn't that significant when you compare it against some of like the princesses and things like that. A card that, honestly, probably best to, not get too overexposed in, because the just sheer market for it isn't going to be that high, because it grades at a gem mint rate very easily. The card itself doesn't command a premium kind of regardless when we look at it raw. So that's one that I would kind of avoid. But overall, that's a pretty good synopsis of like the more rare, scarce cards within Lorcana, especially when you look at the pop reports and look at how hard they grade. The D23 cards are definitely the most collectible cards within Lorcana. I think when we look at long term trajectory and time horizon with Lorcana shaping up the way it is, I mean, it looks to be a juggernaut. All signs are kind of pointing to that. And so getting at the ground level of those D23 cards would make a lot of sense. We also have another D23 collector's box coming up. Stay tuned to my channel if you're interested in kind of the collectors and investment, whatever side of things, looking at kind of some new products coming up, looking at the alt arts. That's really what we're focused on here. We're more of a collector focused channel. Within Lorcana, there's not too many of those. There's a ton of playability, right? Obviously, Lorcana is a player centric game. And so a lot of the content out there and a lot of the people that are involved in the ecosystem are definitely looking at it from a player's perspective. We've mixed up a little bit, talk more about the collector side of things and trying to identify maybe where the best place to collect and invest our money might be when we look at this from a long time horizon. So that is going to be it for the video today, guys. Comment down below on what your favorite kind of collector's card is right now, whether that just be something you really like in terms of the art, whether that be something that you think is rare and is being overlooked, something that you feel like is an IP that just isn't, you feel like it's got some room, it's got some legs, it's got some room to grow. I would love to kind of hear what you guys are collecting. You guys know that I am a huge proponent of the Cinderella Ballroom Sensation from set 2, and then a huge fan of the Stitch. When I think of like, if you came to me with $1,000 and you wanted to invest it into two kind of cards that were semi affordable, not too much over the top, like some of the demo cards, like some of the D23 cards, I would say those would be my two recommendations because they're so hard to grade and the pop reports appear to be relatively low when you think about the grand scheme of things. Once again, when you compare the Cinderella versus the Elsa has over 2,000 PSA 10 copies. Cinderella sitting at 544. I think the Cinderella should be worth more than the Elsa, to be completely honest. So that's why I'm kind of placing my bets in that card. Have multiple copies, have gem mint grades, and I tend to hold those for a very long time. So that's a little bit about kind of how I'm attacking this and using this information. But there's a lot of really good tidbits here, right? Some pretty low pop report numbers for some event exclusive cards. A lot of people in Pokemon and other trading card games, they like to collect the promos. They like to get the promos in a PSA 10. 51 is certainly a low number. So I'll leave you guys with that. Thank you for watching. We'll be back with another video soon. Bye.